Okay, welcome back to part 3 of the Jenn Soto analysis. This is Jenn Soto if you're new to the case. You might be if you're watching from the UK. Stephan Sterns, who was her ex-boyfriend or boyfriend at the time, depending what you believe, has been found guilty of the murder of Madeline Soto, who was only just 13 and was killed on the night of her birthday celebration day, not her actual birthday. So let's go back to the analysis. Where we got to was where the detective was asking for information in order to find Madeline. But Jenn's response was unusual in the fact that she answered it in a way, and she said, "If I knew anything, I would tell you. If I knew anything, I would tell you. I just have no," and I'll leave this word out where it's not necessary, "idea where he could be." So the detective's looking for her, Madeline, and Jenn Soto's mind, because we're looking at her unconscious mind in analysis, has gone to where he could be. She's not with her daughter. And that's where we got to. So we're now moving on to Insight 4. Let's play a little bit of the police audio tape. This is one of the first interviews with Jenn Soto before Madeline has been found, before the more famous 30th of the month video, which you all might have seen sitting on the sofas, and we've done a VEROSCOPE report of that. But this is the audio, one of the first police interviews. You might not have heard this before.
I literally thought I was coming here for the press conference, but this is not what we're here for.
I know, and it's unfortunate that, these are the details that we found, but I think it's very important now that we kind of sit back, evaluate everything, and kind of think every step of the way where Stephan had been in the past, where he be right now, because at the end of the day, we want to go get her.
It's just if I knew anything, I would tell you. I just have no fucking idea where he could be.
So I know that. Say it again, I'm sorry.
Or any idea where she could be. I said they, but
yeah,
he's here. Dude, was there any the video footage that was caught at the church? What exactly was seen? I've heard from other people, but I just...
Do you know much?
It looked like someone stage that walked by, but it's inconclusive. Right, it was too grainy. It was the video was not. You couldn't determine what was in the video, pretty much. So we don't know that she walked by that church. So the last person, Stephan.
Yeah. So we want to know because he's the last person to see her. He claims to have dropped her off at this church before school. Unfortunately, we're close to the church. Unfortunately, we know she doesn't go to school that day. You try and go pick her up. What did after Stephan dropped her off? Did he come back home? About how long was he gone for during drop-off?
I want to say from 8:30 to like 10:15 because around 10:15 or 10:20 is when I got a phone call stating that he got home. He had gone to the vape shop, but I don't know if they weren't open or not yet. So he left, and then hung out around the house and waited till I got back for my doctor's appointment.
So he came back home.
Yeah, he did come back home.
Okay.
He grabbed his phone and called me from the house at that point. He had let me know that he accidentally left his phone. He was waiting for the vape store to open, but it never opened, or something like that. And then he went back home just to give it time, and then he went back out later.
Okay. So from 8:30 to 10:15, that's when he's saying that the vape shop was closed and he came back home?
I think so. Something. I mean, I know he was killing time. He does this. He'll just like to aimlessly drive around to kill time. I believe him when he says that he was killing time. Or at least I did believe him.
What's like usually, how long does it take to go do her drop off and come back?
Like 45 minutes.
Okay. So
45, 50 minutes.
So give or take an hour.
Yeah.
So he should have been back home by like 9:30ish.
Yeah.
Okay. But then there's like 45 minutes to 30 minutes of a gap in time there.
Yeah.
Where could he have gone?
He says he was driving around aimlessly, just killing time.
Okay. So then he comes home, let's just say around 10:15 is what you're saying. What time did you get home from your doctor's appointment?
I'm going to say somewhere between 11 and 11:20.
And then did he leave again?
Yes.
How do you know he was home? Because you got the call?
Because I got the call and I think I saw him when I got home.
Okay. And then what time did he leave again to go to the vape shop?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure what time he left.
And then...
Actually, hold on, let me think.
Do you guys have a ring at your house? A ring doorbell? Do you have any video doorbell system? Do you have any cameras in the house?
No. I'm going to say... I'm going to say he left around somewhere between 12:30 and 1 o'clock, because I remember looking at the time going, I don't think he's going to be done in time running his errands to be back by 2:30 when I need to leave to go.
Okay.
And he said he ran his errands, he stopped at a few comic shops or game stores or something like that. Then he got a flat tire somewhere on 182. He doesn't remember exactly where. I remember him telling me he hurt himself changing the spare tire.
How did he hurt himself?
Something slipped while he was doing something with what's the crank that pops up?
The lift or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
The
about.
jack.
Something slipped and his finger got caught between the frame and the jack, I think. So
Okay.
he had to pull out his finger. So I know he's got a Band-Aid on his finger right now because of that.
So what time do you leave the house to go?
2:30.
2:30?
Yeah, she gets out at 4. It takes me about 20 minutes to get to school, and then I wait about an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah, for the car line and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like to be the first in line.
So at what point did you think, something's up?
Around 4:10 when she did not come out of school, and I was the first in line. I was holding up the line. I was on the first in line, there's cars behind me, and they already have their kids.
Right.
So when I noticed she had not come out, I drove away thinking, maybe I missed her. Maybe I forgot to tell her that I was picking her up from school today because I have a new work schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So
what do you do for work again? I'm sorry.
I work at Walt Disney World, front desk concierge at Coronado Springs.
Okay.
I just recently, that's the biggest reason I even called Stephan, was to come help me this week with her getting her to school, helping with the dog. That's the whole reason I even called him, was to come help me.
And what car did he come up in Northwood from down there in?
In his dad's Cadillac.
Okay. All right. So you kind of get some concerns when she's not coming out.
She's not coming.
Okay, so for those who were able to follow along, then do listen to the audio and read as the audio occurred. So that's given us a fair bit of insight, and apologies to those who like me to narrate. I will do a mixture of the two. But this brings us on to summarizing part 1 and part 2. Where have we actually got to? What insights have we gleaned from the beginning part of this police interview with Jenn Soto? In cases where there is no real further evidence other than circumstantial and also what the suspect or subject actually says themselves, then what intelligence can be gleaned from what they have said is of use to those who are making decisions on if there has been a criminal offence and if there is a reasonable chance that a conviction could occur, and is it in the public's interest, etc. Whatever decisions they come to, the analysis may help with that, because it will either point towards a consciousness of guilt and highlight areas that need further investigation, or it won't. And I think from what we've seen so far in the analysis, is that it does indicate a consciousness of guilt that needs further investigation. So, the cross-interview insights, if you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, please go and do so. This in effect is part 2, but we've cut it off short a couple of times. We were going on for too long for the YouTube episode. So this analysis represents part 2 of Jennifer Soto's interview. Excuse the transcript area, there will be a few, there always are. And I'm producing one analysis a day, so I don't have time to correct them all. We'll correct them as we go, shall we? When examined alongside part 1, Detective Kevin's confrontation section, several critical patterns emerge that provide deeper context. So, insight A. Do you remember the watching like a hawk in part 1? She says, I tried. So we always notice this. I try doesn't mean you succeeded. It very often actually means that you didn't succeed. I tried watching her like a hawk. That predatory choice of language that she makes. I thought I was doing a good job, but I wasn't. And so here we have direct admission that there was a need and that she failed. And that she thought it was all okay, but it wasn't. And how can it be all okay when the job is to watch like a hawk because of the danger, knowing that you failed? And in part 2, we saw more concern about Stephan returning by 2:30 for her departure being the important thing in her narrative. Tracking his movements carefully and carefully narrating his movements that she wants us to know. And it's the order of importance from a subject which becomes important to us as the analysts. So we have the integration. The hawk watching wasn't protective surveillance of an unknown danger. It appears to be management of a known situation. Her careful tracking of Stephan's timeline may reflect an ongoing awareness rather than an innocent concern. The timeline precision pattern which we're observing, in part 1 it was precise. When the detective says 3.5 years, Jennifer corrects him 4 years minimum. So some of the observers in the comments have pointed out, how would she know that it's longer than what the detective is saying? We have in part 2, which we've heard, it's vaguer. It cannot remember exactly when Stephan left. I'm not sure, repeated notice, and so the phrase is repeated, meaning this is sensitive and possibly deceptive, because all her times are hedged with like, around, somewhere between type of language, the hedging of the timeline language. So we put in the deceptive markers and flags when we see incidences of this type of language and the hedging. and the vagueness we notice as well, and the sensitivity. So she has a strategic memory pattern across both interviews, precise about long-term duration of what happened, and vague about the specific day Madeline disappeared. And this pattern is common, so it warrants investigative attention. She's speaking in different ways for different parts of the incident. It's a simple way of saying it. So we have unity language across the interviews. In part one, we heard they would snuggle in the nook. These are warm, accepting terms. And we wouldn't expect that. And it's weird. And then in part two, we saw unity language continue. So phrases like "you guys" would go together. So lots of they pronouns, and she's not using "my daughter" or "better Madeline," "my daughter." Her daughter has very rarely appeared in any of the statements. And here instead, we have, at best, a "you guys" unifying Stephan with her daughter. So we have a normalized relationship type of language in part one, and it explains the distancing pronouns in part two. She viewed Madeline and Stephan as a unit because she had accepted their inappropriate relationship. It is a highly likely scenario based on her language. We have an incomplete denial pattern. She says, "I know, but," and doesn't finish. She self-censors. "That was nor," do you remember that? So she stops mid-word. Self-censorship again. We think that was going to be "that was normal." And of course it's not normal. And she knows it's not normal, and we caught her by the self-censorship that she does know. And then we heard, "there's nothing I can," "he was." So we see multiple incomplete sentences and multiple examples of self-censorship, the stop-start type of pattern. And it's across both interviews with the different detectives. Jennifer repeatedly cannot complete denials or sensitive statements. She just trails off. It's a technique sometimes that people who manipulate and gaslight do. They trail off, expecting you to finish the sentence for them in whatever is your own language inside your head. And it's an old known technique that if you finish the sentence inside your head in your language, your mind will accept the truth of that far more easily than somebody finishing the entire sentence and attempting to convince you. Then your mind's protection barriers are higher because it's not your thoughts, it's their thoughts being verbalized and you listening to them. Do you see the technique? By not finishing the sentence, it forces the listener to say the word, to make up the words inside their own mind, and they're more accepted to be true that way. Doesn't necessarily mean that is exactly what's going on, but it might be, and so we put in the markers. And also don't forget, Jenn might not even know that she does this technique, because if it's something that you learn over decades or in family structures, and it's just become the way that you all manipulate each other, perhaps you're uneven aware of its unconscious power and its unconscious pattern, which has been identified by those that know about those sorts of things, and it's been identified as a technique that does work and is quite powerful. We have an information processing pattern. She says, "almost that was not normal," but catches herself mid-word. And before responding to questions about explicit images, we have no immediate shock. Do you remember? She went straight into being upset that she felt that there was a ruse and that she'd come there under false pretenses to be interviewed. Both show delayed or absent shock responses to the information. In part one, she nearly admits awareness, and in part two, she pauses rather than reacts. And both patterns suggest that the information is not new, that she is aware and likely has seen those photographs or similar photographs before. There's a focus on Stephan's movements. The context required. In part two, the detective's questions naturally focus on Stephan's timeline and movements because Stephan is the suspect and the last person with Madeline. Finding Madeline requires tracking Stephan's whereabouts. Standard investigative protocol focuses on the suspect's timeline, and Jennifer is responding to directed questions about him. However, the focus on him versus her should not be overinterpreted as Jennifer's priority misalignment. The detective is asking about Stephan and Jennifer is answering. Now that is true. However, when the detective says, "We want to go get her," Jennifer responds about finding him. So, is this a legitimate shift worth noting? We've seen it occur, but we balance it with what we know of the interview and the detective's language. And so we have to consider this more carefully. So we're going into a bit more depth. There's an absence of any questions about her daughter's condition. She doesn't say, "Is she alive?" Where would he take her? To the detective. We don't have this sort of language that we might expect. Instead, she's upset that she feels she's been part of a ruse to get her to the interview, and that she's not there for a conference after all. She's there to be interviewed. And that's her priority, rather than the normal priority, wouldn't you think? So we have a complete absence of maternal protective language throughout both interviews. And we don't have any questions about what occurred or when it started. Again, leading us to conclude that she may have seen those sorts of photographs before. The pattern isn't that she focuses on him, it's that she doesn't show expected maternal concern alongside answering questions about him. Statement analysis must distinguish between responses to directed questions and voluntary statements. So we've done that, and yet we still see that she answered about him rather than her. The focus was him. And I think that that is wrong. So we've considered all of the information, and we've considered the fact that the questioning was directed at him, Stephan, because perhaps it's the fastest way to find Madeline. But I believe that this is consciousness of her priority. And in my opinion, consciousness that there is no going to get Madeline. I think her unconscious mind is thinking of those who are alive. And this is why we see this pattern. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's VEROSCOPE analysis. We'll quickly do a pattern summary. When we look at part 1 and part 2, when they're examined together, they reveal 1. Consistent surveillance admission, watching like a hawk, explains the timeline tracking in part 2. 2, strategic memory pattern, she's precise about the duration of some things and vague about the murder day. We have unity language, the normalized relationship language that we saw in part 1, and that explains the pronouns of they and the unity type of language that we saw. We have incomplete denial. She cannot finish sensitive statements in either interview. And we have a complete absence of shock responses. Both interviews show delayed or missing reactions to the information that she was given. Okay, look forward to speak to you in the comments. We'll continue with this police first audio interview until we've analysed the entire section, and then we'll do a summary of our findings from there, and anything else that you spot in the comments I add in. So we're building a case little by little. We're understanding more and more, and it's amazing how as a group the group intelligence is finding things that are quite incredible, really, almost conclusive. Okay, look forward to chat to you in the comments.